There's been a lot of reports recently where people have been cancelled from university campuses. People that are due to give speeches who are then protested against because of their political views or they're standing on certain issues. But it's kind of come full circle now. And in a Daily Wire article published yesterday, the legendary British comedian, actor John Cleese actually cancelled himself. He decided that he wouldn't go and do the planned speech he had at Cambridge University here in the UK, citing woke rules. The article says, legendary actor John Cleese has cancelled a talk he was scheduled to give at Cambridge University due to what he called woke rules. These woke rules, it goes on to say, resulted in another speaker getting blacklisted for doing an impression of Adolf Hitler. A Deadline reported that Cleese's decision came after a week after Cambridge University paper Varsity reported that Union Speaker Andrew Graham Dixon used a German accent to impersonate Hitler using racial slurs in a videotaped meeting. Graham Dixon said the act was meant to be satirical and not an endorsement of Hitler or anti-Semitism, claiming he had intended to underline the utterly evil nature of Hitler and his regime. I'll link the article below so you can read the whole thing, but the basis of it was John Cleese was due to give a speech at Cambridge University, but with this former speaker being blacklisted because of, some satirical jokes he made about Hitler and the Nazis, he decided that I can only assume it wasn't really worth the effort. Now, Cleese is quite famous for doing a Hitler impression in the BBC sitcom Fawlty Towers, but for those of you who may not be aware of the show, Cleese played a hapless hotel owner, and he was the butt of the jokes. He was you laughed at him rather than with him. And his Hitler impression was making a mockery both of Hitler and the Nazis, but also of himself and how clueless and how insensitive he could be. That was the joke. We've got to a point now where we can't joke about anything in a satirical fashion. How have we got to a stage where some of the most deplorable people in the history of human civilization are no longer allowed to be the butt of the jokes? Who is getting offended by someone taking the piss out of Adolf Hitler and the Nazis? Are we to assume that the sheer mention of Hitler, the sheer mention of the Nazis, even in a satirical, humorous or derogatory context, is enough to trigger people? Is it considered an aggressive action to merely mention his name and people are offended? In which case, where does that lead us? Do we end up at a point where we can't teach history? Do we end up at a point where we can't make jokes about bad people because the people that those bad people may have indirectly affected at some point in their family history or racial history will be offended? And I can't get my head around where this ends. And the problem with this particular article, in my eyes, is it has come full circle. I don't blame John Cleese. If he walked in and did this speech, regardless of actually the content of his speech, his lecture, there would be people probably campaigning against him before he'd even said what he had to say. The reason for his visit, the reason for his talk would have been completely overlooked on the basis of some caricature, some sort of character traits of a fictional character he played many years ago, being potentially offensive to a small number of people. So why would you? Why would you want to walk in there to get abused, probably online, to get threatened, to people to try and cancel you? We've seen it with a lot of the Conservative speakers. Ben Shapiro famously always got removed from college campuses in the States, and it happens all the time. And so, you're almost signing your own career death warrant by walking into these places. But the problem is that then eliminates open speech and debate, and that's what we need. This is why platforms such as YouTube are so useful, because it doesn't matter your political leanings, it doesn't matter your colour, your creed, your race, your gender, your sexuality, whatever. None of that matters. You have a means by which you can speak to people and share ideas. I don't know how long that will last. I'm sure at some point there will be calls to cancel anyone slightly right of centre politically from the platform. But for now, it does provide a relatively free platform for speech. But if we get to a point where we are only allowed to see and we are only accepting of speeches and speakers and personalities who completely align with, with our own opinions, then we become more polarized than ever. If we live our lives in an echo chamber, it becomes very, very highly volatile, because what happens is, in basic terms, everyone just winds each other up, becoming more and more polarised, believing that people of the opposing view, however insignificant the differences in opinion really might be, they believe that people of the opposing view are the enemy, and almost end up in a civil war situation. We've seen it most recently with matters such as Brexit, with mask wearing and lockdowns and things like that. Sorry, a pigeon just flew into my conservatory door. And we see everything has to be black or white, if you pardon the expression. Whereas quite often, if you do manage to exchange opinions, exchange views, and talk about issues with people who may have an opposing view to yourself, you might find that you both learn a little from each other and become closer towards reaching a universally acceptable opinion and solution. And the likes of Cleese cancelling these talks is just unfortunately another nail in the coffin for reasoned debate and reasoned discussion, and just another step towards the complete polarisation of opinions between extreme left and extreme right. And this is the problem, like I say. If you remove the rational discourse and debate, then those two sides become more and more polarised, because they will only speak to and interact with people who agree or possibly have more extreme opinions than themselves. I'm being quite fortunate in the fact that I have such a diverse range of people in my social circle, so to speak, that I do get the opportunity to converse with people with widely differing opinions. And whilst it scarcely changes my mind on some issues, it will often tilt my perception of certain issues, and maybe will bring me closer towards a more moderate opinion, where the opinion I held previously might have been that little bit more away from centre, So I think this is it's a sad day for reasoned discourse, for reasoned debate. I don't blame John Cleese in the slightest. I think in his position he's probably had enough controversy. I don't agree with everything he says, and that's why I think it's such a travesty that he hasn't been able to, or has decided not to go out and make this speech at Cambridge University. But let me know your thoughts anyway. I think, like I say, we need to converse and interact with people of differing opinions in order to make our own opinions more moderate and reasoned. But that's just my view. Let me know what you think. Take care, stay safe and sane.